All right, good day to you. We're going to go on a little trip today. We're going to go back to New Mexico. We will be off the regular course of the Rio Grande, but yet very near that same valley without giving a location in which the Rio Grande runs. As a matter of fact, we'll be within that region. The travelers that travel the Rio Grande. It is so sad that our American history, as we teach young people that Columbus discovered America, can be disproven so easily by anyone that uses a little bit of common sense and reads the signs that were left by the travelers in ancient times. And we're very blessed that these petroglyphs that we'll be looking at today and pictographs are from ancient times, really ancient. Probably most of them could be fixed to anywhere from 100 to 400 BC, somewhere in that area. And we will hear the subject water. Naturally, water was a very important thing. We will see signs that were left for mines are near, and there is a operating silver mine, or was at one time, about 1 mile from the location we will be at here. But my gold mine comes from the ancient writings. It would seem that today you're going to see a people that many of their beliefs, religion, began in Carthage, for it is obvious there is a very strong Carthaginian influence because of Tanae, the mother goddess, the wife of Baal, that one that so many worship that is around the world, that or rather that she traveled the world over. And as I mentioned, there are many spirals and there are many labyrinth in this particular area. One labyrinth being the water bird goddess, or the goddess of water. Water being very important. Water was discovered, and usually the reason you found a spiral in an area where they were searching for water, as that water running under the earth in a large, with large enough portion, disturbs the normal electrical fields in some fashion, and that's why that, not witching, but they would use a pendulum on a string and it would begin to swing in this way, much as in our generation, if a farmer wants to drill a new well or something, he takes 2 pieces of metal of length, and it's not witching as some say, but simply that disturbance in that field will cause those to cross over water, and I know for a fact that it works from experience. But it would seem that this particular method worked in this particular area, be that as it may. Not that important, but I do utilize that to explain why you have so many spirals in this particular area, and why would you would have the water bird goddess, because there is a huge irrigation well not too far from this, plus a stream that has a spring that is barrels of water per minute in a very dry land. So they had hit the jackpot as far as water was concerned. Also the spirals and labyrinth have to do with, in various religious circles, as being the womb, if you would, of the earth, and Father Son makes the impregnation within this spiral. And I think that's self-explanatory within itself. And of course, as we discovered in Winslow, Arizona, the Hopi, some of them believe that this spiral is where, like that you would, or labyrinth, is where you enter into another earth age. Quite interesting. These religions, as they are passed down, we can respect all of them, for certainly we learn the travels of individuals and their religions and knowledge as it is shared with local peoples or peoples that are already located in this geographical location. So I know you're going to enjoy this documentary a great deal, for it is our first find of these people in New Mexico along the Rio Grande Valley. That is to say, this ancient, and with this particular party, we've found many different peoples that traveled that Rio Grande up through the Gulf and so forth. The waterways were super highways. That's all they had. Water is life when you're in a desert land. So, with that thought in mind, let's go to New Mexico and let's learn from reading those stones of ages gone by. Well, here we are in the Rio Grande Valley again, a place that always fascinates. We're in foothills. We're not going to give the location, but it's fantastic again to bring some of the pictographs, the ancient history, and the many people that migrated up and down. We have quite a crew. I'm going to have Mike take a little sweep of them here as we're out today hunting, searching for those signs on rock, and the rocks do speak. Some of the most precious history that we have remaining is that history that was left before newspapers were published and before man had communication, certainly that we have today. This was a form of communication. It's always rich, it's always rewarding. So I hope you'll enjoy this documentary today, another documentary from the Rio Grande Valley and the foothills adjacent there too. We're going to sweep up to a petroglyph just above us here. You're going to note first that we have a larger character on the left of the panel, and you'll notice that both hands are upraised with palms open, which means he is praying or seeking protection or guidance from a higher power. And you will note also, very dim to see, but a man sitting on what would look like a bench, but if you look closer, you see the tier, which makes it a temple. And then you'll understand why, with his hand upraised and open, and note his head in particular. Note the circles there. That's always considered in petroglyphs divine. So we see that we have a petroglyph probably of worship. Now we're going to move right down below that. You will note what looks like two crosses, which would not seem to ply in, certainly not at this time, but look at the man, and then note the steps up. And then you see the three panels. Now, as you know, most in Indian culture, there were, as in Christianity, there were three that were certainly recognized. You will notice this from the Cherokee throughout the various tribes. If this should have been Indian, most likely is. But it is a beautiful petroglyph, and there is an old city that would be above this. We're going to be going up there, and we'll give you some shots from there. Another petroglyph in the Rio Grande Valley. Okay, we have an interesting panel here. I'm going to go to the top, which is with the dots, which would be spots, would show a young animal. It could be an antelope, a deer. We'll leave that to your own mind, which would mean what? Well, there was game in this area. And an animal here made probably by a different hand at a different time. And this is what is most interesting. I want to call your mind to these ships. I'm going to draw a line here of so. But at the same time, we have an animal. We have what could be a tree. But many times I'm going to take as an example the Celtic ships, where usually there is a bird, which this doesn't happen to be a bird, and in Ogham, in one slang, it means this bird walked by our ship all the way. But hidden within that is a prayer to Odin. And what it breaks back in that language, as you know, Dr. Fell has found in at least 2 different places, one in America, another in Europe, whereby it states, "O Odin, help protect this ship and see us a safe return." So we have, is it a tree or is it a mast? Well, it would be highly irregular to put a tree in the middle of an animal's back. I would have to point out at the same time what appears to be head features and tail features. Also, your Iberian boats sometimes use reed boats. And each time you find a petroglyph, you have as though the boat ship was gathered up. And you see the reed extensions past the boat. Could that be it? Could there be a deeper meaning here? Well, we'll just have to look into it. Or is it an animal? What I'm saying to you is this. Many times it was customary that they would use a petroglyph to have 2 meanings. And certainly there is a strong possibility that this one does. What a mast. Is it a tree? Again, not necessarily associated with an animal's back. So, we're in the Rio Grande Valley where we have found ships. And it could be that we have someone with a good sense of humor and certainly a hidden meaning as well. It is unfortunate that the markings within, which are line strokes, are so deteriorated because this particular pictograph is exposed to the weather, that they have deteriorated past reading. And perhaps if we were able to read the designs that are within, patterns within the animal and or ship, we would have the answer to the mystery. But as some are so ancient, this petroglyph, or pictograph rather, was made by percussion. And it certainly has deteriorated, meaning that, as I term, between ancient and near ancient, it certainly fits in that time slot. It's very ancient. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Charlene Goodwin. And Charlene, thank you for being so wonderful and showing us the hospitality you have in showing us these sites. And could you just tell us a little bit about where we're standing here?
Well, it's my pleasure. I don't know that I'm that knowledgeable, but from the university, some of the people have come out, the archaeology department, and this plateau up here was a village of approximately 1,250 people. And when it rains and the pottery works up through, we find quite a bit of pottery. I found a fire pit which has been since destroyed by just wanting a place to sit that wasn't grassy, and dug in and found a small one with some pottery probably this big. The rest of it are shards. They're extremely small. Over on a point over here, we found quite a few arrowhead, the chippings for arrowheads. The rest of it's pottery, and as you can see, most of the village itself is only one height, one rock deep.
Yeah. That's interesting. The parameters are very distinct of the parameter wall, and no doubt these were divided up into compartments, as well as I'm sure that there was a kiva here somewhere because of the markings of the worship that we found down below this. And it's certainly a fascinating sight. And the view, as we're going to say, is absolutely beautiful. And actually, as you will notice behind us, though it is higher ground, yet the distance is there that you could visibly, by having a watchman on that peak, signal anything that was approaching this village. There is ample water in the area, and certainly I'm sure they were very happy here, as we find that most were productive. There appeared to be a lot of game because of the various pictographs that are on the surrounding areas, and it is a most interesting sight. Charlene, again, thank you. And we're going to look forward to doing some more of these with you.
I enjoyed it, and I look forward to it.
Great, great. Thank you for having us. You see the approach, the valley leading in, the water supply for this area. We're just going to do a panorama of the area where you can see the old village as it sits, and you will see people looking over the area. The water supply is immediately below us in the valley in which you're looking. And we come around, and then you can begin to see the distinct outlines of the village walls. And you can note that this is rather a mountainous area. And actually, you're kind of in the country of the range of Cochise, that is to say, as well as many other famous chiefs. So you're here in seeing some of the early American history. Long gone by? Well, as you can see, you can tell what kind of tools they use simply on the surface. You can see what kind of dishes they use, that is to say, pottery. And the work, no doubt that many of them did, that still remains for the eye that is trained to see the history that is still with us. Make sure that you always help preserve these sites and keep them for many generations to come, to understand what has gone on by our heritage, our rich American heritage. May we always protect her. May we always keep her. Even as we observe the people of this village, no doubt from the writings and communications that they have left, were a religious people. They prayed to their Father, and they asked His guidance and protection, and no doubt we're quite happy here. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very fortunate. We're in the home of Dolores and Nick Ortega. And we're in a real special place. And I'm going to have Nick tell us the story of Chis. And they have such a beautiful home. And some of the things that through the generations and so forth that they have come by in this place. Nick and Dolores, it's so good of you all to have us. Yeah. And Nick, if you would, will you share with us?
Sure. Heck yeah. So,
good.
Well, my name is Nick Ortega, and I was born and raised here in Chis. And there's my wife Dolores, and we got 2 kids, a girl and a boy. Sweet. We got 2 grandkids, and they left home, and they're somewhere else. We're over here by ourselves now. So, and my great-grandfather came to this area when the Indians were still here, you know. Cochise was here. He made friends with Cochise, and he even baptized one of the kids of Cochise, my grandfather.
Oh, where did your grandfather come from?
From Spain.
From Spain,
yeah,
and you're talking about the Cochise.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, how come they named that little place, they name it after Cochise, you know, but they name it Cheese, you know. For shorten it out, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And so, it was over here when I was growing up, there was about...
Nick, but I was just going to say one thing. They named it after Cochise, but they spelled it in the Spanish way, which is spelled C-H-I-Z instead of C-H-I-S-E, like Cochise.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. And when we were going to school here, there were about 16 families living in this area here, you know.
I see.
And we had a school teacher here, and they used to raise a lot of corn in this valley here, you know. And we used to work here and go to school, and then go in the middle of the day and take a bath at the canyon there in the water. And then we come back and do some more work, you know. And then...
tell them about the church.
Oh yeah, and we got the church, Catholic
I
church here,
noticed that. It's beautiful.
It's really pretty.
And they start building it about in the early 20s,
Wow.
maybe 1900 somewhere they started, and they quit for a few years, They didn't finish they just made the walls of the church and they quit. And then this spring over here up the canyon dried up, and my great grandmother promised if the water will come back, the spring will come up, then the lady will finish that church. So the water that summer, the water came back.
Wow.
And the lady started working the church, tried to build that up, and then the man got in there and finally finished it,
Wow.
But he wasn't, when the water dried up, it wasn't the 1920, 22, I guess, when
Wow.
it dried up,
And the church was restarted in 1923.
Yeah,
1923. We'll try to get a shot of it.
yeah.
Before
It'd be
we
nice
go,
if,
so-
if you
so-
guys could
Look
see it,
inside, it's
inside.
Yeah,
it's got
right.
antiques.
So then we've been here all our life. I worked a few places, another place, but I came back to Chisco. I was born and raised here,
Wow.
and I bought my bed ranch, and so I run cattle on it and everything, But down through the years, we found this.
Yeah, we're the fourth
Thank you.
generation here.
Yeah, the
Fourth
fourth generation
generation.
Yeah.
Wow.
over here.
So when you say home, this is home.
And then I got a son and daughter, and then we got a grandson, and that's going to be the sixth generation by
Oh,
his
that's
time,
great.
already.
That is great.
So, and then we found this around the area here, I guess I found that metate about in the 60s somewhere in there.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, if it's all right, let's let the missus explain what a matati is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And what is it we call the handpiece there?
That's a mono.
A mono. And what does mono mean?
The mono is a hand.
It's a hand. There we go.
Yeah.
The handpiece is called a hand, a mono.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the matata was used to grind their corn, which
Or whatever.
or whatever they needed to do. But they would get this and they would go like this with it until they ground their corn the way they wanted to,
I
or as
see.
fine as they
I
wanted
see.
to. So it's a very special piece. It's complete. It's
It's
nothing
perfect. It
perfect
really
piece.
is.
It hasn't been. And then when they found it, it was turned upside down. And Nick was riding, and he saw it and just decided to go on his way. But thinking about it, he came back to see what it was, and that's what he found. He took it home, and later on he kept thinking, well, maybe the other part to it is there. And he did come back, and he found the part exactly at the same place.
Wow.
Yeah, the hand was on the bottom.
On
of
the
that
bottom,
rock,
but he just didn't pay attention at the when
Wow.
he got it.
Well,
Uh-huh.
and it seems like you have almost two complete pots there.
Yes,
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
little piece is lacking out of there, but hopefully we
Yeah,
can
our
restore
son, was riding. One time we were hunting deer for deer season, and he got on top of these bluffs and he looked down the bluff. And I've been there 100 times, and I never did see it, And they were buried in the cactus, and the rats had a rat nest over it. And he could see part of one of these bowls, and he thought it was a part of the inner tube, But he still was curious, so he got off the bluff and went over there. Boy, he found him there,
Oh.
So he came, and then the evening when he got here, he told us. So the next day, I took a pack horse and bags and whatever, and brought him home,
Oh, that's great. Well, they're beautiful pieces.
Yeah.
It would appear that one is a water pot and the other is for storing grain or whatever, small grain or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were in the same place, the two of them, But the rest had a nest over them,
I'm going to go in front of you here a little bit.
Yeah.
I see an interesting piece here. That almost looks like a foot, doesn't it?
Almost, but the other side.
Look at that. Now, how has it been explained to you? Maybe you could tell us.
To me, there were some people here that study rocks and whatever, and they said that maybe at one time a man went through this place where this rock formed, and he said he stepped in the sand, and then with the years, this thing would form, and got water and made it to a print, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what they told me.
Yes.
I don't know what
In other words, a track in a low place, and then the silt would come in and then harden or ironize, and there you got it. That's a very interesting thing, and it's something that we work with quite a bit.
Yeah.
Now, I see that you have all kinds of pretties. I'm just going to hand them to you and let you explain them to
Well,
us.
I don't know. They told me this was a arrowhead sharpener. They just use it, and sharpen the arrows.
Yes.
So they can kill a deer or buffalo or whatever,
And you can see quite a few have been sharpened up
Yeah, you
there.
can see they've been used quite a bit,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got some beautiful
Yeah.
hammers and axes.
Yeah.
And
This is a tomahawk. It's an arrow. What you call this?
tomahawk.
Yeah. I believe that's what it is, But we found these ones,
That's a nice
Dolores and our
specimen.
son,
And then, of course,
There must be a hammers, I guess.
You bet.
Because they used to put I guess they got a flat plate there for a stick of wood. And they put rawhide or whatever they had, and use it for breaking something. I guess the two of them,
yes.
So because they got a place for the strap there,
And
Yeah.
something we find quite a bit of in this area.
Yeah, this
Petrified.
is piece of wood and it turned to a rock,
Yes.
with the ears,
And it's pretty,
Petrified wood,
yes, and it's pretty obvious it's cedar too,
Yeah,
isn't
it is,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Nice.
we really feel honored. It isn't often that we are able to meet a family that in those 4 generations,
Yeah.
the grandfather from Spain
Yeah.
is able to meet Cochise personally.
Person.
And of course, we know he was one of the famous chiefs in this area, and naturally he was in this area quite a bit.
Yeah.
He and Victoria and some of the others. But
Yeah.
it just really is wonderful that you have shared this with the American people. And
A lot of people come and talk with us here, and we tell them what we know, Of course, I wish I had more story, because it's a lot of story in this thing.
well, it's a fascinating story, and it's your life, and it's true.
it is,
Because people that have written stories about it, and they say that, like years ago they come, I guess, traveling by, and then they wrote books about finding his great-grandfather, which was Ventura, Trujillo, and Clarita.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what the name of
that,
my grandfather is.
They had settled here in the early 1800s,
Oh, that's great.
and they had
Yeah.
found them. They were farming around
Wow.
and their livestock.
Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Well, I don't know what else.
Well, I'll tell you, I am so it's just an honor to be invited into your home and to
Sure.
meet you,
Anytime,
both personally.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Right?
Good luck with your church. That's
Yes,
fantastic.
We keep it going, every year, we collect a little money and put it in the church,
Well, I'm so proud of you for
We
that.
keep it
But
up.
we're getting ready to start.
We have our
doing our-
fiesta,
Yes.
the last of the month, in May. Memorial
Wow.
Day, we have our fiesta, and the priest from TRC will come and give us a mass. And a lot of people, sometimes we get about 200 people here,
Oh, that's
And,
great.
And
Couldn't
then
believe it.
we have the mass, and then we have procession. We bring the Santo, San Gregorio, the
I see.
saint of the church. And we come over here, all the people, 2 lines, ladies and men on one side, and we walk the Santo all the way here, with the procession, and ladies will sing and whatever,
Wow, that's great. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and then after Mass, we come and eat on these streets, we have a lot of
Yes,
food and
it's
eat
beautiful there.
there. And then after we eat, we go and have a rosary and give the church to the mayordomos, to the other mayordomos coming in, and then we serenade through all the houses here, whoever's people,
That's beautiful.
Yes, that's been a tradition for many years.
Yeah,
Wow.
they built the church, they've been like that, So we keep it going,
Wow.
each one, so.
It's too bad that everyone in America does not have a community like that.
Yeah.
A community that respects, represents, and enjoys their American heritage. So here you have settlers from Spain. Here, knowing some of the great American chiefs, they've opened their home to you, whereby you could enjoy this. So, you were there, and we thank you again for inviting us.
Thank
God
you
bless
for
you.
coming over,
All right, again in the field We have a fascinating find here. Let's talk about people for a moment. The Carthaginians were dispelled from Carthage about 800 BC. That is to say, they were there about 800 BC. The things people worship, they take with them. So we can rest assured that as they make their migrations, they're going to take their gods with them, just as we as Christians would not think of traveling usually without saying, Father, watch over me in His name. So, and when people are far away from home, and when there are dangers, and perhaps even the wonder if they will ever see their loved ones again, naturally, they turn back to that thing that they have faith in. That is just natural, a very natural thing among human beings. Now we're back in the state of New Mexico, and we find here that this little moon goddess named Tene, you'll find her all over Europe, basically, all over Africa, in South Africa, but she originated, it is believed, with the Ephesians, and some scholars think even further back than that, with the Egyptians. What is she? Well, she usually has a round head, always, not necessarily, but most of the time, with upraised arms giving a blessing. And usually it is a triangle such as you see here, which has to do with the pelvic area, and usually all you'll see is a round circle with a triangle below it, which represents the feminine, the moon goddess, and the feminine to document that it is a woman. Her name Tene, and she is called other names in other countries, but most people know her as Tene. She has been found all over the U.S., but I think probably we have one of the better finds here, in as much as even the eyes themselves, as you can see, are very distinct. And whether you can see it or make it up, we have three. Oftentimes there is a part moon and then the sun, which means she being the mother of moon goddess, wife of the father sun, in most mythology and in most religions. But we have three here, which is the moon, the sun, and the sun always being the greater. And what is the third? I would not know. But we could say the earth, for which is the completeness of the conception of the sun's rays on Mother Earth, bringing forth light. Now, we have a very unusual thing for the United States. I only know of one other place that we find Tene, and this Phoenician, and I say again, Phoenician symbol, which is a symbol of Tene, with part probably having fallen away, but yet to the scholar, no question, the Phoenician symbol for Tene. And look at this, right beside it. We have another very unusual thing. This being, we see the feet, and we see the labyrinth, with antennae, which is the mother goddess of water, the mother goddess of water. And the place we are in, over this particular place and any other spiral found, labyrinth or spiral, by using a method of discerning running water underneath, which is what this symbolizes, it is there. It is there. On the exact spot of each spiral. Then we have that underflow, and there is so much to mythology. What does this have to do with a Christian? Well, a Christian should know all people, their travels, where they have gone, and we can better understand then how that the migrations took place whereby we have people affixed as they are. If you were to take the nest of language, let's take the Hebrew aleph. You have an ox head. not a letter as we think of an A, though if you were to turn the A over today, you still have the same thing, an ox head. That's how it started in the beginning, and that's what the letter meant, ox head. And throughout all languages, whether it be Babylonian, Phoenician, many times we see these same symbols or a variation of them, which says what? It kind of all came from the same nest, or they certainly crossed paths. So, what a fantastic find. We'll be running this documentary, and as we show you these, we will show you cuts and clips of Tene, as well as the water goddess, as well as some of the spirals and their meanings. We will also show you an ancient language which probably has to do with a summer solstice or the spring equinox. We'll be checking on that and watching it, but what a fascinating area to have so many proofs. You've got it in America. Tene, the moon goddess, the Tene in an Ephesian character, a Phoenician rather character, that means only one thing, Tene. And then the mother goddess of water, when we're standing on one of the main water streams, I have no doubt, because of my familiarity with this area, that would be in this part of the state. So certainly, how did people long ago find it? We use the same methods today, basically, only just a little more sophisticated. Water was more priceless than gold at times, because a man can have a pocket full of gold, and at the same time, if he's out of water and in a desert land, he can die. The gold will not save him. So do not be anxious that we see the signs that are absolutely necessary to sustain life to voyagers or travelers in a strange land. To leave a signpost. Hey, there's not a great deal of difference in you driving down a freeway today and see a campsite where lodging and comforts are available. It won't say necessarily, but it will show the picture of a tent. As for camping, people haven't changed. It's just that man sometimes in his so-called own knowledge, rather than the knowledge of God, which is he's supernatural, meaning more natural, they forget to be natural themselves and try to understand the people that were there. So, to understand who was here, then we know now pretty well who it was. Inasmuch as the Celts used the spiral considerably for location of water, we know that it was perhaps Celt people that had a strong Phoenician influence, and that they worshiped Tene, the moon goddess, with upraised arms to give them a blessing when they were in danger. This gave them great comfort at night when the storms rolled, and when the strangers that would destroy them approached. Hey, they had Tene, and Tene always took care of her own as far as they were concerned. Here we have an interesting drawing, I'm going to call it. You have a serpent. Here's his head, and he's apparently drinking from this pool of water. And we're investigating this site, but very dimly, this is exposed to the letter, you see a line, and then we have a perfect circle above this, which, as you know, I'm going to say it, is Ayin. Ayin in the ancient Hebrew, which means I have observed and I understand. Now, this has decomposed so badly, weathered so badly, I should say, that even above the circle there is a possible Aleph. Very dim, so we're going to reserve judgment on that. Serpent always means water. In Iberian, in Native American, And here we have we certainly have an example of the serpent's head is very distinct, was well cut, and showing the way to water. Here we have an interesting vase, and this vase is a goddess that dates back to 625 BC. And she is the water bird goddess, and you notice the labyrinth there, and you see a smaller picture of the flask up above that, and she is the lady, and you see the square labyrinth there on this particular place. Now, look at this one that we found in New Mexico. Here you have the water bird goddess, and it's a very nice replica of that. And of course, we see that the labyrinth used as a woman's breast, and the woman, and where you see her, you find water. And certainly from the spirals where in Europe and all over where the Celts traveled especially, you find spirals that signify water underneath, water below, water near. So I think it's fantastic that we find this water bird goddess in New Mexico that would have to date back somewhere around 100 to 300 BC. Fantastic, I say. Fantastic indeed. We'll talk about Tanae for a moment. Where did she originate? Well, Tanae in Carthage, we might say, and I'm going to just glance through a lady you're going to be introduced to on this network, Gloria Farley of Oklahoma. We're going to be doing a documentary with her very soon, and she has just completed a work that should be a textbook at every college of this nation. That particular book by Gloria Farley, titled In Plain Sight, will give you this interesting, knowledgeable lady's experience in her travels. Taken from an article in Aesop, which also you will find in her own book. I'm going to just skirt a little bit here. The sign of Tanae, as principally used in the ancient Carthage, was simple, and a triangle for a skirt with a round circle at the apex of the head, with a horizontal line of arms stretched out at the juncture. Often the forearms were lifted upward. And she dates back many years, and you find her in Phoenicia, and you're going to see a Phoenician symbol that is very near this Tanae and the water bird goddess, as a matter of fact, that locks it in, as that part of the people here had a strong Phoenician influence. As a matter of fact, we're even going to show you some Phoenician Greek letters as we progress along. But I'm going to show you several of the shots of the various Tanaes that Mrs. Farley puts in her book from various places around the world. You'll be showing those as we move through. Even at this time, you will find Tanae aboard ships so that you know that she traveled. She was a great comfort to sailors of this time. It took a brave soul to travel, as you will find here in figure 12 of a couple of Tanaes here traveling with this small boat. And she has been discovered all around the world, this particular goddess. And now we're going to move on, if we may, to what will seem like a cross to you in New Mexico that is Phoenician. And then I'm going to show you from America, BC, Dr. Feld's work, the same cross, which is a Phoenician symbol that is utilized representing Tanae. Let's go to New Mexico. Let's see what we have on the stones between these two ladies that was Tanae and the water bird goddess. And what do we have? We have the cross, as you see being illustrated and pointed to, documenting. Here, if you search hard enough, we find that these travelers were connected to and had been exposed to the Phoenicians, their religion, as well as someone that knew their language. Here you see the cross found in Dr. Feld's work, his book, America BC. This particular cross was found in New England. It is Phoenician, and it signifies Tanae, the mother goddess, wife of Baal. Now, found in this same location, and just below it, if we can scan down to it, was Tanae also written in Ogham. Guess what? I'm going to show you in a valley in New Mexico, both in Ogham, Tanae, and this Phoenician symbol, Tanae, right in the presence of the Tanae and the water goddess that you have been observing. And I think it is fascinating that these particular symbols would all be united in one valley. Tanae, you bet. Tanae, this was a very sacred place for these that worshipped here. Were they Celts? Well, we're going to show you something very interesting. As we move on from this, we're going to go to some more Phoenician writing that's going to, I think you're going to find very interesting. Only 3 letters, but these 3 letters say so very much. Geographically speaking, they are located above at a higher point than the 2 ladies we've just been looking at, and the Phoenician symbol symbolizing Tanae. And I think you're going to be quite surprised at what we find on translating, and translated by yours truly, from the ancient languages found in New Mexico. So, we'll have that in one moment, and what do you know? Phoenician writings. Phoenician Greek. We have 3 letters. Beginning at the top, we have the letter N. We have below it the letter L. And below that, in ancient Phoenician Greek, S. I realized that these letters would have seemed familiar in other alphabets, but due to the time period, it reads the ancient Phoenician, even Assyrian, if you like. This is quite old, quite old. And this word means, probably best described in English, circumspect. Circumspect. What does circumspect mean? Well, let's break it back. Look all around carefully before acting. It means in the ancient language also watch. It also means be sober. It means also, taken a little farther, it means wineless. Don't bring wine here, sober in that sense. This is a sacred place. This writing was found near altars, whereby it meant don't be sober when you come here, because this is an altar and it's a very sacred place. And being located immediately above Tanae and the water goddess, the bird goddess, then I have no doubt that this was a very sacred place. I feel also, inasmuch as taking the value circumspect, look carefully, watch, I feel this is a directional find as well, inasmuch as very near this, and I don't think we're going to have a picture of it, I'll just simply say it in passing, we found a cup and rings, which always means metal mining is found near here. 85% of the cups and rings found in Europe, in Ireland, Great Britain, and so forth, were found in mining communities. So it is a symbol. So many of these directional markers, look, be careful before you act, so forth. Be sober, think, leave the wine away from this spot. It's edifying to find an ancient alphabet right here in New Mexico that only someone would have utilized through that time period of 1 to 300 BC. It's sad that we teach our children that Columbus discovered America. In the first place, it would be like leaving a big question mark of who were the American Indians that already resided here and is reported as having been met by him. Forget it. You know, God scattered the children, and it's obvious that the stones speak. And regardless of what religion they were, you might say, well, why are you as a Christian showing these Baal symbols? Well, what's new under the sun? We have Christians today, and we sure have a lot of worse than Baal worshipers with us today. That's the way people are. And again, there's nothing new under the sun. Now, I want to show you another Tene, and I want to show you Tene in Ogham. We go from this ancient alphabet to Ogham, the Ogham alphabet, with a different Tene, yes, in this same location. All of these signs and symbols, pictographs and petroglyphs, are found within less than a quarter of a mile of each other. You're going to see a very ancient Tene. The writing is worn away enough that I feel there's even a possibility that one letter is missing. In other words, more could have been said. Be that as it may, we do not play guessing games. If it isn't there to be seen, we do not photograph it or even call attention to it. So we're going to go now to Tene. The reason we can document that it is Celtic is the Ogham below, that can definitely be read. That's what I'm saying, can definitely be read. In Ogham, we have the letters B, N. And in the Celtic form, they call Tene Bayane, Bayanu, some might pronounce it. That is Tene in the Celtic language, documenting 100% that Celts were involved in this pilgrimage. And quite frankly, there would be no way of documenting, but it is very possible that this Tene is older than the Tene located down below. This is located in a higher portion. So how fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Ogham in relationship to, within the same location, Phoenician, and let it not be forgotten that less than how many miles, let me think real quickly, to Waco Tanks, we're probably about 120 miles north of Waco Tanks, where we found Iberian and Ogham side by side, both saying water. So we've had many travelers up and down the Rio Grande Valley. There is nothing new under the sun, certainly. And many men that do translating do not put themselves in the place of the people that were there to know that, in the first place, most people around 100, 200, 300 BC, basically either royalty, kings, that is to say, or priests were able to write. In the case of the rune alphabet, only priest could write this alphabet. So you have to put your mind in the mind of a priest of that religion, or you're not going to be able to interpret the real in-depth meaning, as an example, of a rune message text. So there you have it as we go into spirals and these various goddesses. Ancient, you bet. But the stones do speak. And it is really sad that our nation that the academic world cannot loosen its frowning brow just a little bit and be able to discuss those things that need to be discussed without feeling that someone's going to lose their credentials if they do a little looking. And I'll borrow Gloria Farley's title to her book, When It's There in Plain Sight. It's been there in plain sight all the time. But you get too many desk jockeys, is what I call them, in the academic world that never quite make the field. By that I mean they never get out and rough it as they should. And therefore, perhaps that's one of the reasons. With these absolute documented proofs of time and in time, frozen in time, and even the fact that water was advertised here and it's so obvious it's present there, documented. The message is true, the message aligns. There you have it, ancient peoples, ancient selves in this geographical location, and you were there.